After 22 years, they replaced me with a TikTok strategist and a designer hoodie. I built the damn bridge, and they handed it to someone who's never even touched concrete. My name is Daniel Reed. I'm 56 years old. Until 6 weeks ago, I was head of strategy at Viren Industries, a Fortune 500 logistics conglomerate built on steel, scale, and smart risk. I'd spent more than 2 decades steering the ship through market crashes, tech booms, a global pandemic, and 3 hostile acquisitions. I kept us solvent when competitors crumbled, but none of that mattered the moment Ethan Maris walked in. Ethan, the new CEO, was 38 and loud in all the wrong ways. Buzzwords, bravado, and an unwavering belief that virality could replace value. His idea of a strategic framework was a TikTok carousel on disrupting logistics with swag. In our first one-on-one, he smirked across the glass table and told me, "You're respected, Daniel, but you're out of touch with modern markets." That was his way of saying I'd aged out of relevance. 3 days later, HR called with a soft exit package and a request to frame my departure as a voluntary transition. "It'll look better on both ends," they said. The board signed off on it with the kind of silence that says everything. I wasn't surprised. The loyalty in corporate leadership lasts exactly 1 quarterly report past your last win. Still, I agreed, not for them. For the legacy I'd built and the people still working there, some of whom I'd hired straight out of grad school, mentored, and watched rise. I wanted my departure to be quiet, professional, dignified. My final presentation was scheduled for the last board meeting of quarter 2. I spent hours on it, not to impress, but to leave behind a roadmap. A clear, stable path through the unpredictable market shifts I knew were coming. I rehearsed it once in the mirror, then deleted the closing thank you slide. No one needed a farewell speech, least of all me. That morning, I wore my navy suit, not because I wanted to look good for them, but because I wanted to remember who I was on the way out. I walked into the boardroom 10 minutes early, as always. Some of them nodded. Most didn't look up from their phones. I clicked through the slides methodically. Performance metrics, market shifts, long-term risk mitigation tied to operational spend. Every chart had a story, every bullet point a warning. But I might as well have been talking to the wall. No one asked questions. The CFO checked his watch. The general counsel was on Slack. Ethan sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, smiling like someone humoring a museum guide. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Not out of reverence, out of boredom. Then Ethan stood. "Thank you, Daniel. That was comprehensive." He turned to the group. "Now, let's welcome our new head of strategic development, Ryan Keene, MBA from Stanford, content creator, 1.2 million followers across platforms. Ryan's going to bring fresh energy to the brand." Ryan walked in wearing a tailored jacket over a black tee. His hair was gelled into something that looked like a tech demo. He fist-bumped Ethan and gave the room a wink, before launching into a 5-slide deck with phrases like audience capture and emotional logistics. I wish I were making that up. I sat through it, every second of it, didn't flinch, didn't sigh. When he finished and the room clapped, actually clapped, I stood, nodded once to the board, and left. No handshake, no thank you, just a nod, and a next slide. I packed my office slowly, took down the photo of my team from our Shanghai expansion, folded my old blazer, left the awards, the plaques, the framed article from Forbes where I was once called the architect behind Viren's resurgence. Let it all sit there like artifacts in a tomb. All I took was my integrity, and an old Mont Blanc fountain pen my first mentor gave me back in 2003. He told me, "No matter what happens, always sign your name to your work, even if no one sees it." I walked out at 7:12 p.m. The halls were quiet. The janitor nodded as I passed. That was the only acknowledgement I got on my last day. And strangely, that nod meant more than the entire boardroom's silence. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my college friends, not my brother. Just disappeared from the org chart like a man sinking into the sea. I read books, walked in the mornings, tried to feel something. For a while I didn't, just numbness. But I never once regretted how I left. They stripped me of a title, not my discipline. 6 weeks passed. Then, this morning, I opened my inbox and saw an email with a subject line that read, "I know what they did with your playbook. Want to talk?" It was from Amira Kwan, A name I hadn't heard in years, and suddenly I wasn't numb anymore. 6 weeks had passed since I walked out of Virion with nothing but a fountain pen and my spine intact. I hadn't looked back, not even once. I kept busy the way you do when you're trying not to feel useless. Reading, long walks, coffee I actually had time to sip. The quiet was nice, too nice, like a room you know was emptied in a hurry. Then came the email. The subject line read, "You were right about Bytecore. Want to prove it? No greeting, no fluff, just that. Signed, Amira Kwan." Amira had been a thorn in my side for years. Sharp, brilliant, competitive to the bone. She'd led strategy at Nova Delta when I was peaking at Virion. We clashed more than once at conferences, usually over market trends or M&A timing. I respected her even when I was outmaneuvering her, which wasn't often, and now she was in my inbox. I stared at the screen, rereading it like it might change. Eventually, I typed back, "I'm listening." We met the next morning at a cafe in Midtown, neutral ground for sharks and blazers. She looked the same, sleek charcoal suit, hair pulled back, expression like she was 3 moves ahead. But there was something softer in her eyes, not sympathy, something closer to invitation. She slid a manila folder across the table. "Bytecore is a balloon full of helium and hubris," she said. "You saw it coming before the rest of us. Now it's wobbling." I opened the folder, charts, contracts. A confidential draft memo detailing brand recalibration and influencer-facing channels tied to initiatives I knew wouldn't break, even if they caught fire on social. "Your boy Wonder," she added, stirring her espresso, "has no supply discipline. He's treating enterprise logistics like a dating app rollout." I raised an eyebrow. "You're following Virion?" She shrugged. "I follow weakness, and your exit triggered a lot of noise." I flipped through the packet, scanning performance projections, supplier conflicts, burn rates dressed up in pastel language. It was worse than I imagined. The core operations were deteriorating under a glossy shell of marketing jargon. "Why come to me?" I asked. "Because this isn't about revenge," she said. "It's about exposure. The market's being misled, quietly, elegantly, but misled. And you want me to help you pull back the curtain?" She nodded. "Who better?" "You built the playbook they're pretending to follow." I thought about it, about Ethan's smirk, about the boardroom full of people who couldn't even look me in the eye as they handed the reins to a guy who built his reputation on stitched videos and Canva slides. "I'm not looking for headlines," I said. "Neither am I. This isn't a takedown. It's a correction." I agreed. We kept it quiet. She'd provide access, public filings, whispers from her old network, vendor reports. I'd dissect strategy, not with a sledgehammer, with a scalpel. The next few weeks were the most alive I'd felt since leaving. I didn't need a title, I needed a purpose. Every night, I sat with a red pen and 3 monitors, tracing the anatomy of Bytecore's chaos. It didn't take long to find the fractures. The influencer-led expansion into brand-forward freight experiences was hemorrhaging money. The TikTok strategist had pitched a loyalty program for freight clients using NFTs and geotag swag. 1 logistics partner had already walked. 2 more were reevaluating scope. I compiled everything. Pattern recognition was second nature. Supply chain decisions made to chase headlines. Margin erosion masked by ambiguous language. They were branding momentum, but they weren't creating it, just lighting matches and calling it sunrise. And then, one night, while digging through a shared project repository someone had leaked to Amira, I opened a deck titled Project Nexus Visionary Expansion Strategy. I froze. Slide 1 was flashier. The font had changed, colors updated, a new title page. But I knew it. Every data point, every diagram, it was mine. They'd stripped my name from it, reformatted it, and now credited the whole strategy to Ryan Keene, the Ryan Keene. The one who replaced me, the MBA with 1.2 million followers and a ring light in every office. The strategic expansion plan I pitched 8 months before I left, the one Ethan dismissed as legacy-minded thinking, was now being spun as Ryan's genius. I leaned back, hands locked behind my head, staring at the screen. They hadn't just replaced me, they were plagiarizing me. I sent the file to Amira without comment. 5 minutes later, she replied, "Let's finish this." And just like that, the game was on. I remember the meeting like it was yesterday. Quarter 3, late afternoon. The boardroom was half lit, half listening. I stood at the front, clicking through a deck I'd spent weeks building. The proposal? A quiet but aggressive expansion into modular freight hubs and underserved coastal zones. Low-cost infrastructure with scalable ROI. Boring to some. Brilliant to those who understood that true growth rarely goes viral. Ethan sat there, arms crossed, smirking. When I finished, he waited just long enough to let silence hum through the rooms before saying, "It's safe. Feels legacy-minded. We need splash, Daniel." That was code for, I need a headline, not a strategy. He tabled the initiative without discussion. The board nodded along. I left that room more frustrated than I'd been in years. But I let it go. Or I thought I had. Now here I was, months later, staring at the exact same plan, rebranded, repackaged, and rolled out as part of Virion's visionary Pivot 2.0, led by none other than Ryan Keane. The same coastal expansion I designed, the same logistics playbook, even the same vendor outreach structure. Only now, it came with neon gradient slide titles and hashtags like #future freight. They hadn't just stolen my idea, they were executing it poorly. I spent an hour pacing my apartment before calling Amira. She didn't answer, just texted, "Already saw it, meet me tomorrow." We met in a quiet shared workspace in Soho, one of her off-the-record spots. No branding, just frosted glass and whiteboards. She had a team already digging into the financials behind the launch. "They're bluffing," she said, pointing to a screen full of cost projections. "Your original plan had a 5-year margin curve. This new version, 1.5, no buffer." I nodded. They shaved the timeline to match a growth narrative, but the market won't wait for them to catch up. She brought in a lean analyst team, 4 brilliant people who didn't blink at 17-hour days. We pulled every document tied to the rollout. Press releases, SEC filings, procurement activity, port contracts. The data was noisy, but patterns always speak. The flagship supplier Ethan touted in the launch video, already facing litigation over breach of contract in Panama. Their equipment had a 34% failure rate in last year's field audits. But none of that made it into the public narrative, not even a footnote. We drafted a market brief, not as whistleblowers, but as strategists. A clean, numbers-first breakdown of risk exposure and Bytecore's expansion. We didn't name names, we didn't need to. The math was enough. Slashed margins, delayed permitting. Technology integration gaps. Projected EBITDA versus actual infrastructure cost over time. Every chart was double-sourced, every assumption backed by real benchmarks. We titled it plainly, Bytecore's Expansion, Risk Profile Assessment, and Margin Fragility. Professional, quiet, damning. We sent it, anonymously, to a short list of institutional investors known for being risk-averse, people who read between the lines. We knew it wouldn't cause panic. That wasn't the goal. The goal was doubt. Just enough to slow the machine, to trigger questions behind closed doors. I didn't expect a phone call. I especially didn't expect one from Laurel Ames. Laurel was a financial journalist I'd known for years. Old school, sharp, surgical with her sources. She'd covered my work at Virion before the culture shifted to influencers and clickbait. She called late, 9:46 p.m. I was watching the city blink through my window. "This is off the record," she said. "I got a tip today. Said Bytecore's coastal strategy wasn't just flawed, it was lifted. That sound familiar?" I didn't answer. "Daniel," she continued, "they said it's your strategy, your deck, that the board shelved it when you were there, then rebranded it 6 months later under Ryan Keane's name." Still, I said nothing. "Look," she said gently, "I'm not looking to burn anyone, but if there's truth here, people deserve to know who's really steering the ship and who's taking credit." My throat was dry. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink. "I can't comment," I said finally. "But I'll say this. Some strategies are built, others are borrowed, and borrowed ones tend to fall apart when tested." She paused. I could hear her typing. "That's more than enough," she said. I ended the call, stared out the window again. My reflection looked tired, older, but sharp. They'd taken my blueprint, put a fresh coat of paint on it, and assumed no one would notice. They were wrong. The first crack came in the form of a press release. Due to unforeseen logistical challenges, the Nexus Coastal Initiative will be postponed indefinitely. Unforeseen, my ass. Amira texted me the link before it hit the wires. She didn't include a message, just the article. I read it twice, then once more for good measure. Postponed indefinitely. That's corporate speak for. This was a bad idea, and we finally realized it after lighting a pile of money on fire. Within hours, Bytecore's stock took a modest hit. Not catastrophic, but enough to send the institutional investors into conference calls. Analysts who'd once praised Ryan's innovative market storytelling suddenly had questions about the real-world feasibility of geotagged shipping rewards and influencer-led expansion models. The following morning, Ethan appeared at a Q&A hosted by one of the bigger financial publications. He looked rattled, less like the brash disruptor who once told me I was out of touch, and more like someone realizing the brakes had gone out halfway down the hill. When asked why the rollout failed, he stumbled, blamed regulatory bottlenecks, then pivoted to internal restructuring. The moment someone asked about the recycled strategy and alleged IP reuse, he said the legal team would clarify the origin of all materials. That's when I knew it was working. Ryan Keane, meanwhile, went dark. No tweets, no TikToks. His branded hashtag #FreightFuture vanished overnight. His personal site redirected to a coming soon landing page. I didn't gloat. I watched closely. Amira called it poetic justice. I called it predictable. I hope it feels good, she said over coffee one morning. It doesn't, I replied. But it feels clean. The quiet vindication did more for me than applause ever could. A week later, the calls started. First it was a mid-sized regional transport firm out of Ohio, then a logistics tech startup in Vancouver, then another in Arizona, all different sizes, all different models. But they had one thing in common. We don't need viral, one founder said. We need substance. It hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in months, I felt useful again. Not remembered, not revered, useful. I didn't say yes to everyone. I didn't want to be dragged back into old patterns. But I took on 3 clients, quietly. No announcements, no website, just results. One, a startup focused on adaptive warehouse tech, took my operational risk framework and applied it to their scaling plan. 3 weeks later, they landed their first major enterprise client. They called to say thank you. That meant something. The second, a last-mile delivery firm, asked me to mentor their new strategy lead. She reminded me of myself 15 years ago, sharp, structured, but slightly overshadowed. We spoke weekly. I helped her present to their board. She nailed it. My name began floating again, but differently this time. Not tied to a title, not framed in buzz, just Daniel Reed, the guy who doesn't talk much, but always sees 3 moves ahead. It was enough. One evening, I sat in my apartment, a mug of black tea going cold beside me, reviewing a proposal for a 4th client. A soft jazz playlist I never really listened to buzzed in the background. Then my email pinged from James Whitner. Subject, checking in. Whitner, Virion's board chair. The man who nodded but never spoke during my final presentation. The same one who looked at me like a calendar relic while they ushered in Ethan and his designer, sneaker vision of strategy. I clicked it open. Daniel, I've been following the market chatter. Looks like the Nexus fallout has raised some valid concerns. We may have been too quick to pivot. Would you be open to a conversation? James, no dear. No Mr. Reed. Not even a question mark at the end of that last sentence. Just the tone of someone realizing they misjudged the value of silence. I stared at the screen, read the words again, then leaned back, folding my hands behind my head. There it was, not an apology, not yet, but something more interesting. Acknowledgement. My phone buzzed again, another client referral from Amira. I didn't reply to Whitner, not right away. Let them wait. The new office isn't grand. It's on the 10th floor of a building no one photographs, wedged between a dry cleaner and an insurance brokerage. But the view is good. Clean skyline, river in the distance, just enough light to remind me I'm not underground anymore. I picked the space myself. No assistant, no corner suite, no high-tech espresso bar. Just a long desk, 1 shelf of books, and a leather chair that creaks when I lean back too far. It's enough. More than enough. 6 months ago, I walked out of Virion with a pen and a quiet sense of closure. Now, I spend my days advising 3 companies, small, focused, founder-led, no boards, no showmanship, just people building things for the right reasons. One is a logistics firm based in Oregon that uses predictive routing for rural freight. Another is a platform helping small manufacturers digitize inventory pipelines. The third is a climate-focused warehousing startup that's somehow making solar-powered fulfillment centers cool. They all came through referrals, no website, no pitch deck. Just conversations that started with, "We heard you're the guy who knows how to build without burning." I work on my own terms now, 4 days a week, mornings only. I take walks after lunch, read more, sleep better. There's no office drama, no politics, no pretending. I never replied to James Whitner, not once. He followed up twice, once through email, once through a mutual contact. I left both unanswered. I'm not bitter, just done. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding, especially when the other side only calls after their house starts to burn. A few weeks back, I read the headline in passing. Virion CEO Ethan Morris resigns amid market doubts. No fanfare, no spin. Just a quiet exit buried on page 7 of the financial section. Apparently, after the Nexus fallout and 2 missed quarters, the board pressured him to step down. The article mentioned a strategic leadership reset. I nearly laughed. Reset. Like this was a software bug, not a cultural collapse. Ryan Keane? Last I checked, he's marketing something called crypto snacks, blockchain-enabled snack subscriptions. His face is still all over social media, now with protein bars and glowing teeth. He even posted a video about resilience in the face of corporate sabotage. I didn't watch the whole thing. These days, I measure success differently, not by headlines or headcount, but by clarity, stability, the soft hum of purpose in the background. This morning, I wrapped up a strategy draft for the Oregon client, modular warehousing tied to an AI demand forecasting model. It's simple, efficient, and scalable. No hashtags, no press event. Just results waiting to happen. When I finished the draft, I leaned back in my chair and let the quiet stretch. The window was open, the city murmured outside. Horns, footsteps, a distant siren that faded before it reached me. I listened, really listened, not for chaos, but for confirmation. I opened the drawer to my left. Inside was the Mont Blanc fountain pen, heavy, balanced, a gift from a mentor who believed in permanence. I hadn't used it in months, but today felt right. The equity agreement for the logistics startup sat on my desk. Modest shares, long-term advisory role, built not on flash, but on trust. I signed my name at the bottom, slow, deliberate, full stroke. Then I capped the pen, set it down, and just sat there. No music, no notification buzz, no audience. I smiled, not because I'd won anything, not because they lost, because I'd remembered who I was and never had to become someone else to survive. People talk about redemption like it's a comeback, a stage, a microphone. But sometimes redemption is a small office with good light, a name you don't need to defend, and the freedom to say no to the wrong kind of success. That's where I live now, and for the first time in a long time, I don't plan on moving.